November 13th, 1872. A ship is found sailing itself through the Atlantic Ocean. No captain, no crew, no passengers, no bodies, just a ghost moving through open water. This is the story of the Mary Celeste. The ship wasn't wrecked. That's what makes this impossible. It wasn't sinking. It wasn't on fire. The cargo was untouched. The food was still on the table. The crew's belongings were still in their bunks. Whatever happened to 10 people in the middle of the ocean, it happened fast. Fast enough that they left everything behind. And not one of them was ever seen again. But here's the detail that will stay with you. One of those people was a 2-year-old girl. We'll come back to her. The Atlantic in 1872 was a brutal place to make a living. Merchant sailing was a world of constant danger, brutal weather, and almost no margin for error. Ships vanished out there all the time. Storms took them. Pirates took them. The sea just swallowed them. But when a ship vanished, it vanished. You found wreckage, or you found nothing at all. What you did not find was the ship still sailing, completely intact, with 10 people simply gone. That had no explanation. It still doesn't. And the closer investigators looked at the Mary Celeste, the stranger it got. There was one piece of evidence found below deck that should have told them exactly what happened. It pointed to something catastrophic. But it also made the disappearance completely impossible. That contradiction sat at the center of this mystery for over 100 years. The most disturbing part is still ahead. The Mary Celeste was a brigantine, a 2-masted merchant vessel, and in the fall of 1872, she was loaded with 1,700 barrels of commercial alcohol. She set sail from New York on November 7, 1872, bound for Genoa, Italy. On board were 7 crew members, the ship's captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. 10 people total. Captain Briggs was 37 years old, experienced, deeply religious, known as a careful and sober man. He didn't take risks. He chose his crew carefully. He brought his family because he trusted the voyage. The route was well traveled. The ship was sound. She was last seen by another vessel on November 25th, somewhere near the Azores Islands in the mid-Atlantic. Everything looked normal. Then silence. On December 4th, 1872, the brigantine Dei Gratia was making its own crossing from New York to Gibraltar when her crew spotted a vessel about 6 miles off. It was moving erratically, yawing in the wind, partially under sail but clearly not being steered. Captain David Morehouse ordered a closer look. As they approached, he recognized her, the Mary Celeste. He knew Briggs personally. They had dined together just before both ships departed New York. Morehouse sent 3 men over by lifeboat. What they found made no sense. The ship was seaworthy. There was no significant damage. The cargo was intact. The crew's belongings, their clothes, their boots, their pipes, their personal items were all still there. There was food in the galley. There was water. The ship's navigation instruments were in place. The last entry in the ship's log was dated November 25th, placing her near the Azores. But the lifeboat was gone, and every single human being had vanished. Morehouse had a decision to make. He put a small crew on board and sailed both ships to Gibraltar to claim salvage rights. That decision would later be used against him. Keep your theory forming. I'll ask you about it at the end. The salvage hearing in Gibraltar was presided over by a British Admiralty lawyer named Frederick Solly Flood. Flood was methodical, skeptical, and immediately suspicious of Morehouse. The story was too clean, he thought. A captain finds his old friend's ship completely abandoned and conveniently sails it to port for a salvage payout? Flood began building a case for foul play. He hired a marine surveyor named John Austin to examine the ship in detail. What Austin found gave Flood exactly what he was looking for, and also raised questions that Flood would never be able to answer. There were marks on the ship's hull that looked like they could have been made by an axe. There was a dark, reddish stain on the ship's railing. There was a sword found below deck with what appeared to be bloodstains on it. Flood was convinced this was murder. Morehouse and his crew had killed the Briggs family, taken the ship, and concocted the abandonment story to explain how they came to have her. He pushed hard for prosecution, but here's where it gets stranger. The stains on the sword were tested. They were not blood. The stain on the railing was tested. Also not blood. The marks on the hull had a more likely explanation: routine damage from rough weather. Every piece of Flood's murder theory collapsed under examination. Morehouse and his crew were eventually awarded salvage pay, a fraction of what the cargo was worth, and released. No charges were ever filed. But Flood's suspicions had poisoned the record, and the case was closed without a real answer. Not one piece of evidence ever explained where 10 people went. Now let's talk about what was actually found below deck, because this is the detail that breaks every clean theory. Among the 1,700 barrels of alcohol, 9 of them were found empty. And they were made of red oak, not white oak like the rest. Red oak is slightly more porous. Under pressure and temperature changes, those 9 barrels may have leaked enough vapor to cause a massive but non-destructive pressure event below deck. A sudden explosive expansion of gas, loud enough to sound like the ship was breaking apart. Frightening enough to make a careful captain order everyone into the lifeboat immediately. The theory is that Briggs intended to stay connected to the ship by a tow line while the fumes cleared, then reboard. But the tow line snapped, and the wind took the Mary Celeste away from them faster than any lifeboat could follow. It's the most logical explanation anyone has ever found, and it means 10 people died slowly in an open lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, watching their ship sail away from them. Benjamin Briggs was 37. His wife, Sarah, was 30. She had left their young son, Arthur, back home in Massachusetts because the voyage seemed safe enough. She brought their daughter, Sophia, just 2 years old, because she wanted to keep the family together on the crossing. Arthur would wait at home with his grandmother. He waited a long time. No one ever came back. Arthur Briggs grew up without parents, without his little sister, without any answer for what happened to them. Sarah's family, the Cobb family of Massachusetts, spent years trying to get answers from investigators, from maritime authorities, from anyone. There were none to give. Sophia's belongings, her toys, her small clothes, were found neatly stored aboard the ship. She had been there, and then she was simply gone. The weight of that doesn't get lighter the more you think about it. Now for the theories, because there are 3 that serious researchers have built real cases around, and none of them fully close the loop. The first is the seaquake theory. The mid-Atlantic in late November 1872 runs over geologically active zones. Some researchers believe the ship passed over an underwater earthquake, a seaquake, violent enough to send shock waves through the hull. To the crew, it would have felt like the ship was breaking apart from below. No visible damage, no flooding, but pure terror. A captain like Briggs, rational and fast-thinking, orders immediate evacuation. The lifeboat launches, the tow line breaks, and the rest follows. It fits the evidence, but there's no record of any seismic activity in that area on those dates. A compelling theory. An absent proof. The second is the alcohol vapor explosion. We already walked through this one, and of all the theories, it has the most physical evidence behind it. The 9 red oak barrels, the missing lifeboat, the position of the ship when found. It explains a rational captain making a reasonable decision that turned fatal. The doubt comes from the cargo itself. Most experts say commercial alcohol of that grade wouldn't generate enough vapor under those conditions to cause a pressure event large enough to panic an experienced crew. Maybe it would. Maybe it wouldn't. The uncertainty is everything. The third is piracy, and it refuses to die. The alcohol alone was worth a small fortune. Pirates and opportunist crews operated those waters. The theory is that the Mary Celeste was boarded. The passengers and crew were murdered or taken, and the attackers fled for reasons unknown, perhaps spooked by the approaching Dei Gratia. But there was no blood, no signs of struggle, nothing taken. A piracy event with no evidence of violence and no stolen cargo is almost harder to explain than the disappearance itself. 3 theories. None of them closed the door. 10 people walked off that ship and the Atlantic took them. A little girl's toys sat in a cabin for 9 days before anyone found them. And for over 150 years, the Mary Celeste has kept sailing through history, crewed only by questions. No answer has ever been confirmed. No remains were ever found. The sea gave back the ship and kept the people. So what do you think really happened? Was it the gas? The quake? Something darker? Tell me your theory in the comments. I read every single one. Next week, we leave the Atlantic and travel to a case that an entire country tried to bury. A crime that went unsolved, not because there were no answers, but because someone powerful didn't want them found. Subscribe so you don't miss it.